Hello, everyone, and welcome to the I'm So Tired podcast. The show where we are so incredibly tired and we fight our way through our depression by talking about random pop culture bullshit for your and our own entertainment. With me, as always, is Hugo. Hugo, how are you doing, man?
Hello.
Oh,
I'm
and
doing
I'm
all right.
Islam, by
I'm
the
doing all
way.
right.
I'm so tired, man. It's like 9
Oh yeah,
p.m. Are you tired?
yeah. I'm doing all right actually
You're
this
doing
week. I'm
alright
less
for
tired than
once.
usually am because I had midterms earlier
Yeah.
in the week, so I've been riding the post exam high for a few days,
Oh, yeah.
feeling pretty good. Feeling pretty
Yeah.
good.
I've been on the down low because I had 2 job applications and I didn't get either of them. Like job interviews, not applications. Sorry, job interviews. I get
Yeah.
either of them. So yeah, that was
Well,
that was something.
more time for content, I suppose.
More time for content. Like I can stream. I'm actually thinking of here this Sunday. I'm gonna sit down and actually make a schedule for my streams because I have a couple of games I want to stream like regularly. I want to
Mhm.
finish Near Automata, but I want to do it on stream because I've only played that game on stream. And
You
also
should
this,
finish that game,
yeah, I should.
or
And
we
this
will all
could,
be mad at you. So
yeah, okay, fair. I don't want the beatings. And
yeah.
Disco Elysium is gonna have the final cut
Mm.
soon, and I'm thinking of streaming that one as well, actually. So I'm trying to figure out how to like place the game so I can have like a stream
Okay,
schedule.
how does that work? In what's the final cut? Is just like the final super game of the year edition or whatever,
Not quite,
basically.
because it's not DLC. It's actually a free upgrade to the main game. So if you own the main
Oh,
game, you get it.
cool,
So it was on sale
nice,
right now, so I just bought it. But the way it
right?
works is that they made the game, and apparently they got so much money after making the game, so they're just like adding content and they're adding voice acting throughout the game because apparently there was
Mhm.
voice acting, but not for the whole game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so they just like recorded everything and added some news quest, new political vision quests or whatever they're called. I don't know. I'm not quite sure. All
Amazing.
I know is I'm gonna try and go for the communist route, but
Oh
we'll
yeah,
see. We'll see.
we'll see if that works out.
So today's show is gonna be breaking up in a few different categories. We're gonna be talking about a few different things. First of all, we've got a new segment we're gonna be talking about, called Inshallah Cyberpunk 1.2. Because Hugo, he has
Yeah,
waited to play Cyberpunk since December, and he hasn't played it yet because he's waiting for that
we're,
patch.
we're almost there. We're
We're
almost
almost
there.
there. It was supposed to come a month ago, and it hasn't arrived yet. So yeah, each week, inshallah, Cyberpunk 1.2, and we'll see if it happens.
Yeah, and
Afterwards,
then it will turn
yeah,
into the I don't know whatever the
Night City Report or whatever.
Night City Report or something like that, where every week I'll just tell you how I'm going through
Yeah,
Cyberpunk because you've already played Cyberpunk.
I
Because
already play. Like I'm that one person who legitimately likes the game.
yeah, and
Yeah,
I'm actually really looking forward to it because I'm really into cyberpunk as an aesthetic.
yeah,
Movies, books and stuff. It's kind of a genre that I'm really into. So I know the
yeah,
game has a bunch of problems, and which is why I'm waiting to
yeah,
play it at its possibly at its best, hopefully. But yeah, we'll see if I enjoy it.
yeah. Afterwards, oh, we could just like Afterwards, Suicide Squad reactions. We just watched the trailer. Then we're
Yep.
gonna get into some Falcon and the Winter Soldier episode 2 talk because
Mhm.
we've got thoughts. And then the main thing we're here today is I'm gonna teach Hugo how to play D&D, and he's gonna be so tired after this episode.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
So
I've got a notepad here because I'm gonna have to take notes as if I was doing an online class. Islam is a teacher, by the way,
yeah,
in real life.
so
So
I've
hopefully we'll
actually
see. We'll see. This could go in your next job application. You
yeah.
could just upload this. Oh look, I taught my friend to play D&D.
Actually, no bullshit. We have this thing called Blues taxonomy, and it's like
Right.
basically how to teach in a correct order to make sure of like maximum teaching. I don't
Hmm.
know, and
Yeah.
I used it actually to make sure that that we can get like the best way of teaching you. But
God.
I used it really quick. I didn't go into details with it, so it's gonna be like a
Yeah.
loose conversation.
Fair.
No worries.
Fair. Fair. Fair.
Yeah. Inshallah, Cyberpunk 1.2.
Yeah. It's supposed to come out. They said in the last week of March. So we're there. They've released, I think, some news last week saying they released weird news because they talked about what they're changing in the game.
Yeah.
But they haven't said what they're fixing in the game. Because they've talked about improvements to the driving and something about the police spawning too quickly when you do a crime or stuff like that. But what I really care about is, does the game still crash all the time on PS5? That's all I want to know.
Actually,
because if it doesn't crash, I'm going to actually play it finally.
Yeah, because honestly, the police thing, I've seen many people complain about, oh, they spawn too quickly. And my answer to that is, don't do crimes. Because you don't get anything from doing it. Like, you're not a criminal, you're a mercenary in this game. So you don't really get anything by doing crimes. Yeah.
It's not really GTA, is it?
No, it's not. And you can tell that they kind of, as far as I understood, management of CDPR was like, hey, you got to make it more like more like GTA. And they shouldn't have, because like when the game is good, it's good, but it's like so fine between sometimes. So yeah, that it is what it is though. But yeah, inshallah, Cyberpunk 1.2 next time we speak. Hopefully it's not gonna be a segment, because that's my fear, honestly.
I swear to God, because if they delay it again, they say, oh yeah, next month. At least last time they delayed. Okay, to be fair, last time they delayed the patch, it was because all of their servers and computers had been hacked, and every single person that was working on the game on the new patch was working from home because of COVID, and they had to send in all of their individual computers and workstations to like the IT team that deals with hardware, who had to clean all of the computers from the hack that they'd received, make sure that there was no viruses left, make sure they couldn't leak other stuff. Like, it was a whole thing. So I get why they delayed the last time, but I feel like, it's like karma. Like, once you do something bad and you just can't get back from it. And yeah, I don't know. I hope the game is good. I hope they can fix it, because honestly, it looks great. It looks like something that I would enjoy in the form that they've actually shown it. So when they showed it, when it worked, it seemed like a game that I would really like. But yeah, we'll see how it is. Hopefully, the segment turns into the Night City report by next week, but we'll see.
We'll see. Okay. Yeah. Moving on. Let's get to more of the meat of the show today. So, the Suicide Squad. We just watched the trailer right before we went live. The original plan was to do a live react, but there was copywritten music in the trailer, and I don't want to get copyright strikes on the channel. So, yeah. So of course, like when you're live when we do these recordings live. So yeah, it is what it is. So we just watched the trailer. And Hugo, what did you think?
I thought it already seems a lot more fun. It kind of seems like it is a James Gunn movie, which I've enjoyed what he's done, but he's also getting to do the R rating that he could never do with Marvel. So it is kind of it does feel kind of fresh even for him. I don't know, the dialogue is classic James Gunn dialogue, so I enjoy it. I have no idea who the characters are, but I don't think it really matters, because I think he's really good at sort of introducing.
I also feel like that's kind of the point, because a lot of these characters that are in this movie, like, who the fuck is Peacemaker? Like, is John Cena's character?
Yeah, I don't know.
Who's Polka Dot Man? Like,
I know that just because of the meme, because it's funny, but it's like I've heard of it, but
and that's the thing.
People are going to die in this movie, right?
Oh yeah.
Suicide Squad.
Yeah, I think Gunn already said, like, don't get too attached to these characters. So I guess he's just gonna kill them off one by one, which I hope, because that sounds fun. Yeah. As far as, like, for me at least, this seems more in line with what I want from the Suicide Squad, which is fun, but also like it just needs to be insane. And I always talked about how I feel like the first Suicide Squad movie was almost misguided and like it's as if David Ayer didn't understand why the Suicide Squad worked in the comics. Because in the comics, they don't fight Superman. They fight like, oh, we're gonna fight these Black Ops people. Let's go kill them. These we're terrorists. That's why we have these guys. You don't send the Suicide Squad out to get Superman until you do, however, in in the new Rocksteady game. But anyways, for me, like it's colorful. It seems funny. And explosions. This is giant starfish. I don't know what's going on,
Yeah.
and I'm here for it.
The
And
violence is ridiculous.
the violence, like, dude, having Sylvester Stallone play a shark that eats people sounds funny. Like that's fun
That's
to
A
me.
plus casting.
Yeah, that's
And he rips
excellent.
a person apart
Yeah.
at one point, and it's just blood.
Yeah.
That's like bright red blood that squirts out. Yeah,
Yeah.
it looks fun.
Have you ever watched James Gunn's movie Super?
I haven't. No.
Yeah. It stars
Should I?
Rain. Yeah, it stars Rainn Wilson and Elliot Page.
Hmm.
And Rainn Wilson plays this superhero. Oh, not superhero actually. He's like a normal guy who decides one day to become a superhero, but he's like super fucked up. So the things he does, like at one point, cuts in front of him at the at the movie theater, and then he just like beats him half to death as the superhero because no cutting in line, and it's like super R-rated and bloody. He just like it reminded me a bit of that, like that crude humor that he's known for. Like you can tell he
Mm.
tried as much as he could with the Marvel stuff, like
Yeah.
the Jackson Pollock joke in the first Guardians is a great example of him trying to sneak in some of
Oh
that
yeah.
more like that humor. We're like, what's this doing in my MCU? That's weird.
Yeah. But it was smart enough that it was like, oh, a child is not going to really get what's
And I
going on,
remember
so
that
it's fine.
specifically because I watched it with my nephew. And he was like,
Right.
he's almost 18 today, but when the movie came out, he was like, yeah, younger. And when that
Yeah.
joke came, it was like me and his dad, and we were sitting there, and the joke came, and I started laughing. He was like, "What's so funny?" And I was like, "You'll get it one day." I said, "When you get
Cool
older,
Uncle
you'll
Islam.
understand why this is funny." I will
Okay,
not explain it
that's
to
great.
you. But yeah, I
And I
like.
remember watching it. The person he was like, "Whoa, oh, okay, they went there,
Yeah,
sure."
I was like,
But I was
okay.
glad because, like, the MCU is famously quite sexless, which has to cater to everyone. But I like when they sneak some, I don't know, more grown up jokes in there.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, I think it looks good. Again, with DC, we talked about DC last week. We don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing, but it seems like they're just focusing on making cool movies,
yeah.
which I'm on board with. And
Yeah, that's what I hope
I'll
as
watch
well. That's
this for
like
sure.
make cool movies.
Yeah.
You know
And then
what?
if they do build up to something, cool. If they don't, cool. I don't, yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of the MCU, Falcon
Yeah.
Winter Soldier episode 2 just dropped on Disney Plus today. Full
Mm-hmm.
spoilers, of course. We're just gonna discuss the episode, and we're gonna
Yep.
like do this every episode for Falcon and Winter Soldier
Yeah.
because it's pop culture bullshit, and we're here for it, and
Exactly.
it's what everybody's talking about. So, of course,
We
we're
might
gonna be
as well.
talking about it as well.
Yeah.
What do you think of the episode?
I thought this surprised me because the last one I thought was okay, but I
Yeah.
wasn't like super wrapped up into it, and this one got me. Like I was really interested in what they were doing. Like because last week, I got that they were going for they were building a sort of a social justice message, which I'm obviously on board with. But I thought the way they did it last week was a bit clunky with him having financial problems and all that stuff. And this week they nailed it for me. Like they made me really interested in that side of the character. Last week I was much more interested in Bucky's story, and this week I was much more interested in Sam's story. So yeah, I'm into it for both Sam and Bucky. So I'm excited now to see more of this because I thought the elements that they introduced with Isaiah, the character, and with the new Captain America and him being like this absolute ass, was great. It's kind of a cool dynamic that I really enjoyed, and I like the social message that they're trying to portray. I hope they can go through with it because like I don't know if Disney Marvel is willing to go all the way with this kind of social commentary, but I hope they do, and if they do, I'll be really happy. What about you? What did you think?
Yeah, I agree I almost 100% agree with everything you said.
Mm,
I can't find anything I disagree with in your statement. That being said, though,
mm,
I remember last week when we had Christian on the
yeah,
podcast. Shout out to Christian, by the way. Go follow him on twitch.tv/isochristtian and follow his
yeah,
podcast, Latch Popcorn. What a great guy.
yeah.
Anyways,
I'll be
um,
recording with him tomorrow.
yeah. Oh,
So yeah,
great. You're going to be on Large Popcorn.
yeah,
Tomorrow you're going to record it and it's going to come up later,
yes,
right?
yeah,
Yeah, the David
exactly.
Lynch episode, right?
The David Lynch episode. So we're gonna get weird.
This is going to be so good. Okay.
Yeah,
Enough plugging Christian's things. Let's go back to our
yeah,
things. So, as I was saying though, yeah, Christian talked about how for him the whole thing with the financial issues worked for him. He was like, "Oh, that makes
yeah,
sense." And also last week when we were recording, our good friend Jessica was actually in chat. And I
yeah,
noticed her comment, but we don't read chat when we're recording the podcast. But I noticed her saying that, oh, the thing Sam is going through kind of mimics what black servicemen in World War II were going through when they came back from the war as well. And for me, it's like, I don't know. I talked to Joe about this as well, and we're
mm,
both still in the camp of I don't know if we're just too European, but this
yeah.
just seems utterly insane to me. Like,
Really?
why doesn't he like? I get what Christian said last time. Like, I understand. Like, oh, it's difficult for him to get a loan because he could die any day because like he's out there
Yeah,
fighting, so he can't pay back his loan. But
sure. But like
but
at the
like
same time, I feel like does the Avengers not have like I don't know some massive life insurance
I mean,
policy thing for the family or whatever?
and that's the thing
I
with
don't
that's the problem with the MCU in general when you think about it, because it works because it's a shared connected universe. Like they can get away with a lot of shit, like having
yeah.
origin stories that aren't origin stories because you already introduced the character.
Mhm.
But at the same time, like Tony Stark gave Peter Parker glasses and that connected to like the most expensive satellite of all time or whatever. And Sam is like, yeah, I'm just trying to apply for a loan. And that's the thing with the MCU sometimes. You need to have your suspension of disbelief going that this is
Absolutely.
like an entire universe like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, for me at least, uh, I still am enjoying the show, and especially this episode with the John Walker character, the new Captain America. And I
Yeah.
liked how in the like I always have closed captions on in case
Mhm.
like I didn't hear what they said. I can always read the closed captions. And yeah, even whenever he was in the suit, it said Captain America, and it annoyed me so much.
Oh yeah.
What did you think? Did you think he was sympathetic? Did you think he
I
was?
okay. At the beginning of the episode, I thought they were setting him up to be sympathetic right away,
Yeah,
and I was so annoyed. I was like, no, no, I'm not gonna like this guy. I don't.
yeah,
Please don't make me like this guy right away. That's just no. Shut up. Like, and instantly, like they kind of make him sympathetic for the first scene, and then right away he's just a military bro. So
yeah,
I'm like, nah, I don't care about this guy. And he's always like, and he's always treating Sam and Bucky as if they're like supposed to be his underlings or
yeah.
something
Because
like
they were
that. Like
Steve's
the
friends, so
boss.
therefore they have to be his.
But like, yeah, because I think he thinks with Steve they were like, he was the boss and they were his, helpers or whatever.
Yeah,
But like that wasn't the dynamic at all. They were just friends and they were doing stuff together. So yeah, and also whenever they followed Steve, it was because they respected him, not just
yeah,
because like, oh, he's Captain America, so we have to follow him. Um, so yeah, I thought he was really annoying the whole time. I shared in Bucky's outrage over the fact that this guy was Captain America now.
yeah,
It was really annoying, and I think that was intended. So yeah, very well done for me.
yeah.
What
For
about
me
you?
as for me as well, I feel like okay. If I had to say like a negative thing, and that's like an MCU
Mm.
thing in general, but the action sometimes, like I feel like the action last episode was
Oh
way
yeah,
better with him flying around because you could tell where it was
way
going.
way better.
But the
Absolutely,
action here with the fucking what's it called, the truck
trucks.
sequence with the flag smashers was
I don't care.
so shout out to what's her face, the girl with the curly hair, who's I guess the leader
Yeah,
of the flag smashers, who was also isn't
yeah.
she the one from Solo who was also
She
like
is the one from Solo. Yeah,
Because I was
It's
like,
the
what?
second time in a row that
Yeah,
this girl, who's really good by the way, she's being cast in a role of like this sort of underground group that wears a mask, and there's like a dramatic reveal, and like the characters are supposed to be surprised that it's a woman or whatever.
yeah.
It's the
It's
second.
the second time that I was like, wait, I've seen this before. This is Solo, a
Yeah,
Star Wars story.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
But,
like the
but
flag
I agree
smashes a
with that.
lot. I was
Oh yeah,
actually
I think they're great.
surprised at how they handled the flag smashes. Because when you hear it the first time, like, oh, we gotta beat the flag smashes, like, well, this
Yeah.
sounds horrible. And then they make them sympathetic, though. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I think that's what they nail, because I think
yeah,
what I was worried about, that it was just going to be, oh, America amazing, and these people don't want borders bad,
yeah,
but they really deviated from it right away. Like
yeah,
in this episode, they're already way more sympathetic than the sort of American establishment of the military represented by the Captain America character. Um,
yeah,
and I think Sam and Bucky are sort of in the middle. Like they want to investigate because these people, have been doing violent stuff.
yeah,
But at the same time, they're not entirely unsympathetic to what they're trying to do.
yeah.
Because like I think in this episode, they're stealing medicine to
Medicine and
bring to
vaccines,
like
yeah,
refugee camps,
yeah,
and I'm like, cool. Why that seems like the right thing to do. So
yeah,
yeah, I think they're setting up an interesting dynamic. I wonder where they're going for it.
yeah.
With it.
And I had
I
to
think
guess, like,
we'll get more of that by the end of the episode. I
yeah,
think by the end of the show. I think this episode specifically was very much about Sam and what it means to be a black man in America, even in this heightened reality.
yeah.
So yeah, I think that stuff was really well done.
Okay, do you want to continue talking about that, or want to circle back to the flag smashes real quick? Because I have
We
like
can
some,
talk about the fact I'm finished
yeah,
with that. Yeah, go ahead.
because I have some thoughts about them as well. Because for me, it seems like they're setting up this like, so John Walker wants to be Captain America, and that's kind of the
Yeah,
thing. Like he says, "Oh, I don't want to," but he even says like later on, like, "No, I modeled my whole life after Captain America. I want to be
yeah,
him." That just sets him up to failure because he's like, I feel like I am Steve Rogers. Like, no, your personality is like you enjoy this.
yeah.
Obviously, you enjoy fighting. You enjoy going to war. Steve doesn't. I feel like that's what makes Steve like a cool character. Like he has a tough time letting it go because it's the only thing he knows at this point. But he's very sympathetic to everyone. Like he doesn't want to kill. He doesn't want to fight. And I feel like this dude, he's gonna snap at any moment. I feel like making the flag smashers sympathetic, we're gonna have
Hmm.
this showdown between John Walker and the flag smashers. And it's gonna end up like as
Yeah,
bloody as the MCU will allow, of course, but bloody. Um,
yeah.
and yeah, I feel like that's gonna be the crux of it. And not only that, they kept alluding to, because they're introducing Marvel, so Zemo from Civil War is in this as well.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
and I think
that's
they
pretty
already
cool.
confirmed he's gonna have like a bigger role in this as well. So hopefully we'll see what
I
they're gonna
mean,
do with him.
yeah, I think they're kind of setting him up as sort of an unlikely ally
Yeah,
for Sam and Bucky, because they need him to figure out, well, where did these people get the
yeah,
super soldier serum?
yeah.
It
Because the
must
Flag Smashers are superhero, not
he's
superhero,
probably
but
the only
super
one that has.
soldiers. Yeah, but at
Yeah,
the same time, the Flag Smashers are running away from the brokers or whatever it is they're called. So they have their enemy. They have their own enemies as well. So we have
yeah,
like this interesting dynamic that they're trying to do good while they're being chased by the U.S. government and whoever these broker guys is. And I'm
hmm,
sure like when Sam and Bucky see what they're doing, they're gonna do the right Captain America thing and say, "Fuck you, U.S. government, we're going rogue," because that's like
could be.
could be like yeah,
Although Sam does say in this, the last time I went rogue, I had to,
yeah,
live in fear and escape for 2 years. I don't want
yeah.
to do that again.
I want to do that
Um,
again.
but we'll
Yeah,
see. I mean, maybe they will. Maybe they will. Yeah, but I don't know. I think we'll get more on that by the end. I hope it doesn't. Like, I hope it doesn't devolve in a simple black and white good versus evil thing, because they're setting up stuff that is quite complex for
so,
Marvel,
so yeah,
especially.
let's go into that then, because in this episode they introduce Isaiah Bradley, the
Yeah.
first black Captain America that we've never heard about before now. Because
Wait,
apparently,
he's from the
sorry,
comics as well. He's from
Yeah.
the comics as well. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. I was like, oh, they're doing this now as well. Cool. I'm not sure.
But
Okay, because I believe that if I'm not mistaken, yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah, he is the guy that I've been thinking about. Yeah. Because there's an oh yeah, now I know why I was confused. Okay, they're actually setting up another thing. I think now, actually, when I just remembered who this guy specifically is, I will not get
right.
into it here because this could be a potential spoiler. But if they're doing what
Yeah.
oh, okay. This I got theories going on, but I'm not sharing it because I hate when people share their theories. But
This is a no
oh
theory
this is gonna be cool. This is gonna be cool. They're setting up something. I
Okay.
just realized it right now. Anyways,
But regardless of what they do in the comics or what the theories might be, I think what they do in the episode is fantastic with him.
yeah, yeah.
Because
Sorry. Let's circle
this
back to
idea,
the episode. Yeah,
like this idea that the US after Captain America had a black Captain America in the 50s, and they
yeah,
sort of use him for war, then did experiments on him for 20 years, and then like just left him out with no money or anything. He's
yeah.
living in
Because
like
he's
some
living like in a bad neighborhood. It seems like, or
yeah,
not a bad, but like a poor neighborhood. So
yeah,
he's not well off at all.
at all. No.
And
And you can tell he has a real grudge with the US government because
yeah,
like, and I think they're alluding to some pretty heavy stuff, like because in real life there was this big scandal in the 70s when it was discovered that from the 30s to the early 70s in the US there were these horrible experiments on black men where they basically injected them with syphilis
yeah.
to just see what the effects of syphilis were long term with no treatment. So yeah, this they're kind of referencing stuff like that because they used this man as somebody to experiment on, and then they just left him when they didn't need him anymore. And the fact that Sam is so outraged at this
Yeah.
is setting up some interesting stuff. And the second he starts being
Yeah.
outraged and they start having a small like argument between friends, the police shows up and they try to arrest him until they recognize him. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're going for it in this
Like
one.
they go, yeah, exactly. And especially because like he walks in and oh yeah, Joe is here. I guess
Yeah.
Joe just got a rogue haircut. Don't tell anyone.
Ooh.
Yeah. So yeah,
So, yeah,
I was a sorry.
Isaiah.
Yeah, as I was as Isaiah as well. Yeah. Yeah, and then he goes like, yeah, out. The police are like harassing Sam. It's like, hey, is this man
Yeah.
bothering you? Shows your ID. And I like the guy being like Bucky being, hey, do you not know who this guy is? It's like, oh, dude, they're
Yeah.
Avengers. And oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't recognize you at the goggles. Haha. And I was so angry. I was so fucking angry because Sam's really dealing with it in this like show. Like he's got to deal with the fact that he's black. And I remember, especially like I remember seeing a lot of African Americans on Twitter, for example, going, "Oh yeah, Captain America is black now. Captain America is black. This is so cool. I can't wait to see what they're doing with it." And for me, the fact that they went with this route of him being like having imposter syndrome and be like, I can't wear the shield. I can't be Captain America. For them to like throw him away like this, I think it works really well.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
At the same time, I don't know, I really like the scene with Bucky and Sam at the psychologist, at the therapist.
Yeah.
It's funny, but at the same time, I really liked how he was like, "Hey, the reason why I want you to pick up the shield, because if Steve was wrong about you, does that mean he's wrong about me?"
Oh yeah.
And for me,
Great
that was the great scene. For me, that was so good.
It was so good from Bucky, and then the response is like, "Look, there is certain things about me that you and Steve cannot understand because you don't know what it means to be a black man in America." So it's like both sides have really strong internalized psychological reasons for why they have an issue with each other at that point. And yeah, I think it was a great scene, a great dynamic, and they're setting up them to have like kind of a reckoning with their own problems and each other's. And yeah, like this is what is good about the MCU. It's like whenever you get screen time with characters that you haven't got a lot of screen time with, instantly they're able to make you care about them so much more. It was the same with Wanda in WandaVision, and in this one specifically, because like, yeah, I liked Sam, I liked Bucky, but we didn't get that much time with them, and now I'm like so invested in their characters.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, babe. Sorry.
That's very nice.
I'm so and like exactly, I'm so invested in characters because like Sam was just the dude that
He
was
was
there.
Falcon.
Yeah,
He was funny,
it
but
was funny, and like in Winter Soldier at least, I feel like his character specifically works a lot because Cap's whole shtick is like, hey, I I'm still in the war. I can't return from the war, and his job is like helping people come to
to get
terms
out
with
of them.
to get out of the war, comes to terms with, and that's why like he gravitates towards him. He's the guy that ends the war, Sam, and like helps you come home. And I feel like that's like such a sweet way of like bringing it back. Like he can't be that guy for the rest of the world.
Mhm.
I think like that for me is what like really works of his characterization. And also shout out to the Black Falcon joke. Just a quick shout out. That made me laugh.
Yeah.
He was like, "What should I call you, Black Kid?" I was like, "Okay,
Yeah.
that's funny."
And then he went to the other kid and he was like, "Got him."
Yeah, I got him good, didn't I?
Yeah. It was.
All in all,
Yeah.
I'm looking
it was
forward
good.
to. Do you think they're gonna stick the landing with this one, or do you think the last episode we're gonna be like, "Oh, it was so good," and then this last episode happened?
I don't know, because like I don't think they can do the flying characters shooting colored
Yeah.
rays at each other
Yeah.
with this one. So I hope they have to get a bit more creative. Although again, we talked about it for what, 25 minutes, and all the stuff we talk about is the characters.
Yeah.
And it at the end of the day, it is an action show,
Yeah.
and the action was kind of boring.
Yeah.
So that is something that the MCU just doesn't seem to be able to really nail all the time. They have some really good action sequences, but most of the time it's like, yeah, they're punching each other on a moving vehicle.
Yeah, I
It's
actually
fine.
went back and rewatched the bank scene from Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League specifically. I went back and
Yeah.
watched that bank scene with Wonder Woman, her introduction. And I kept thinking, like, wow, this scene is so fucking cool. Why can't the MCU do something like this? Like the way she
I don't
she
know.
feels like
I
a
really don't.
superhero. I feel like the Bucky scenes, action wise, are at least better. Like I feel like his action scenes work because it's always, especially when it's the Winter Soldier thing, where in the
Yeah.
last flashback episode, in the last episode with the flashback, where he's like walking slowly, shooting, walking, taking the knife, and like that works for me. But as soon as like there's
Yeah.
too much going on, I don't know, I get distracted. I'm like, yeah, can we move the plot along? Because I actually want to see the
Let's get
characters.
to the part where they talk.
Let's get to the part where they talk. Thanks, babe. Joe's just giving me soda.
Islam is getting like treats and stuff, and I'm just
getting
sitting here by
candy,
myself.
so I'm gonna be
And I
snacking.
forgot to even like put water in my bottle, so I don't even have water. But yeah, so Joe, please, can you send some water over?
She'll
From
send you some
Denmark.
water.
Should arrive in time.
Yeah, should
right?
arrive right around the time we get to our main topic of the day. Hugo, you know me. I'm a big fan of D&D, Dungeons and Dragons. I
Dungeons and
fucking love
Yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons. It's probably one of the, if not my favorite game of all time. Oh, he is. So for the audio listeners out there, Hugo has a paper ready and he wrote down D&D. So he's ready to learn. So I'm gonna teach Hugo D&D. I've never actually. This is the worst way you can learn D&D, by the way, by having someone tell you how to play it over Discord. But we're gonna go through a bit of the history of D&D. We're gonna talk about like what you think. We're gonna go for like the motions. And when we're talking about D&D specifically, we're gonna be talking about D&D 5th edition because that's what people are playing nowadays. It's the 5th edition of D&D. But before we get into that, I want to ask you, Hugo, what is D&D?
Yes.
I want you to say what springs to mind when you think D&D.
D&D is a paper-based role-playing game that I think it's usually played with multiple people. And you go through a story that is told by a dungeon master.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called? Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. A dungeon master, and the dungeon master sort of sets up a story and multiple, like, I think branching narratives, because I'm pretty sure you can make like narrative choices during the story, and you have your own character that has like a specific class and race and like characteristics, and you can choose what kind of combat you use.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure there's also elements of that are non-combative where you just have conversations. And yeah, it's set in a fantasy world, of course. Obviously, I know that, but other than that, and there are mind flayers, which are those tentacle monsters from Bloodborne.
Exactly. Yeah, that's mostly it.
So yeah,
Okay, thanks for listening, everyone. So I'm so tired.
yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
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 Bye.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's actually more or less what
So
the game is. You actually nailed it, but we gotta go like in detail right now.
I have an idea of what it is. I just don't know how it works.
Yeah.
I think that's my main.
So like historically, D&D started when Gary Gygax, the creator of D&D, he used to sit in his basement with his friends and play these like miniature war games. Like Warhammer and such, where it's more like painting an army and using that. But they kind of like they really loved reading Tolkien and stuff, so they kind of went in that direction instead. And they were like, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could tell these stories on our own and play in the Tolkien universe, basically?" And that, in like a quick short version of it, is how D&D was born. Like in that basement, where it just started telling stories and playing these characters and whatnot. Which then turned into Dungeons and Dragons. After that, oh sorry.
Okay, so it was actually specifically Tolkien, or just fantasy in general?
Fantasy, but it was Tolkien inspired. So, but they did have like D&D originally did have hobbits until they got hit with like copyright strikes and shit. Not copyright strikes. That's very modern, but they did get a cease and desist, and they changed it to halflings instead. But they were actually called hobbits. So there are like a lot of elements from the Tolkien verse that actually is the foundation of D&D, because you got your elves and your wizards and whatnot. And like originally it was that. So that was like when they created the first edition of Dungeons and Dragons. So you should think of it like when you play a video game, this is the sequel, Dungeons and Dragons 2. That's when the second edition came, and then I believe after you got advanced Dungeons and Dragons, because you were like, oh, this isn't advanced enough for me. I need more math. And then you just like continue on from there. And now we have D&D 5th edition, which is the one that released in, I want to say 2014 or 15. I can't quite remember. But around there. So it's pretty new. Yeah.
Is it still the same people who are sort of developing the game?
Yeah. Gary Gygax died in the 2000s, I think. So yeah, rest in peace, Gary Gygax. He died. His son, I believe, is still kind of involved, but he's more like a PR person, I think, more than he's actively developing. But no, you've got all these like new teams, the new creative teams that come in. So it's actually very modern as well, especially like when you read like some of the storytelling and whatnot. You can tell like it's people that are around our age that are actually writing for him now and making the rules. Like, like it's millennials that are making D&D now. And D&D 5th edition is where it like blew up for multiple reasons. Like you got Stranger Things is a great example of why it blew up, because people are like, oh, what's this game? I want to play it. Yeah. And also 5th edition is actually the easiest version to get into. They simplified a lot of things and just made it like an easy entry point to D&D. Other than that, they also had a lot of podcasts start popping up as well. Like you probably heard of Critical Role, which is like all these voice actors like Matthew Mercer and Laura Bailey and Ashley Johnson. Like all of these people, play D&D together. And I think also the reason why people gravitate towards that is because it's legitimate good storytelling. Like you get invested in these characters. But that's basically where we are today. So people play D&D for multiple reasons.
Wait, I've never actually watched Critical Role, because I think it's a bit intimidating how long it is.
Fucking long.
How long? Like every episode is like hours, and
Yeah.
and the continuous storytelling goes for like years and
Yeah.
seasons and stuff. But do they actually voice act the characters differently, or do
Yeah.
they just
Yeah.
okay?
They
Okay, that
actually.
does sound pretty cool.
So Matthew Mercer, who you may know from, let's see, he's
I've
Luke
heard him.
Skywalker in Battlefront 2. He is McCree in
Oh,
Overwatch. He is I'm trying to remember like his roles. He's also like in multiple Final Fantasy games. He's in a lot of
yeah,
stuff.
I've
Just
probably played a bunch of games that he's in.
yeah,
So
yeah.
he's also
Like
just a voice actor for TV as well, right?
yeah,
Or
yeah,
like movies and
yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So
roles,
and
games.
he's the dungeon master for it. He like wrote the entire universe that they play in. So much so it's
Oh,
actually
that's cool.
and it's actually canon in D&D. So you can buy the book, and it's actually a
Wow,
legitimate canon book that they
that
even
that's
reference
cool.
to right now, like in the official D&D. And the rest of them play their characters, and yeah, they do the voice. They do voice actor for the characters. So like, it's kind of cool when you're listening, because some of these people, like you can tell, they have like deep voices normally, and they when they speak, oh,
Yeah,
I'm gonna talk like this because this is how my character would speak, like shit like that, you
yeah.
know? Yeah,
And also, they're actually legitimate voice actors, so they
and
know
their
what they're
voice
doing.
actors. And actually, it like Critical Role got so big that Amazon Studios actually bought 2 seasons of the animated show that they're doing,
Wow.
where they're gonna animate some of the things from their first campaign in animation
Yeah,
and like tell the story. And it's like it's gonna be R-rated as well because that's how
yeah.
the game is with them as well. And they're gonna do 2 seasons, and they're gonna do some of the more popular storylines where you can just like
Mm,
jump in and watch it. And it's
yeah.
pretty cool. They've had comic books about the characters. They've had fucking what's it? There's a new novel coming out like that's about two of the characters and like their background
And
story.
it's so cool that the
Yeah,
creators of the game sort of made them canon.
yeah,
That must be so fun for them.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. I believe so as well. Like for them, it's be like, oh, this is like fucking cool. Like this is canon
yeah,
what we're doing. Because
yeah.
D&D takes place in the multiverse, as they call it. So the way they look at it is like every game exists in the same multiverse. So you and I could play an adventure together, and some other friends,
Yeah,
like you, me, Christian, Ethan, we'll play a campaign together. And I
yeah.
could play the same campaign with some other people. Both of these campaigns will take place in the multiverse. So that's their way of explaining why these stories exist the way they do.
So
So
in some
you
way, any campaign is kind of canon
yeah,
in
it's your
sort of a
canon.
random kind of way.
So,
Yeah.
for example, I have like my own campaign setting that I've created, and it's this is gonna be so nerdy. Like I've made a map with an entire continent, which has like an empire, a kingdom, and this like and something called the Council countries, which is like
Mm,
almost like the EU, but
right.
but with these
Right.
different races, and they have like their own politics and whatnot, and what gods they believe in and shit. And like
Mm,
that's my universe. So whenever I play games in my universe, I have that rule that every game is canon. So
mhm.
if I'm playing with a group that does something, and maybe one day if I have another group, what the first group did will still be canon to that other story. That's
Right.
how I
So it
run
could
it.
affect like sort of a starting point for the new story
Yeah,
in some way.
perhaps, for example, yeah.
Right.
But yeah. But let's talk about actually the core books of D&D 5th edition. I brought them with me right next to me so I can quickly get them. So, first of all, the most important book to get, Hugo, you need to get your hand on the Player's Handbook. Okay?
The player's handbook.
The Player's
Okay.
Handbook. You need to get this one. If you can't, if you don't want to pay for this one, you can get the basic rule sets for free legally online, uh,
Cool.
which has like some of the basic elements of this. So it doesn't have all the classes and whatnot. But basically, what this book tells you is how you can create a character and
Yep.
how to play the game. So it's like divided in 3 parts. The first part is like, yeah, character creation. The second part is playing the game. And the
Hmm.
third part is spellcasting, because if you're playing a spellcaster, there's an entire chapter dedicated to you.
Cool.
So you can do
But
spells.
this doesn't have like canon, so it doesn't explain the universe.
It does, kinda.
Right.
Because here's the thing when you get like into the nitty-gritty of D&D. So as I said, I have my own campaign setting that takes place in my
Hmm.
own universe that I've created. timeline wise, my universe is actually closer to like the industrial age than it is to like high fantasy. So
Oh, okay.
in the universe I created, the game is actually like more of a like they use magic instead of using like oil or whatever or like steam. So
Mm,
it's like magic they use instead, and they pour it out of the
right.
ground and whatnot.
Mm,
If you don't want to get into all of this, I usually don't like use chat, but for once I'm gonna do it because Christian had an excellent point. The starter set is also a great entry point. The starter set has the
right.
basic rule set, and it has like an adventure that you could run. And then eventually it would take you like 3 or 4 sessions, I believe, to finish, maybe 5, depending on the DM.
Right.
But yeah, this book is like the holy
The
grail. Like you need to
Yeah,
have this one.
the book.
Like you can't
Mhm.
play, you cannot play without this book, but you can play with the basic set. Now, moving on to the
So there you
second
go.
core book, which is the guide I use a lot, which is the Dungeon Master's Guide. So there's a whole
Fair.
other book for the Dungeon Master. Now, this book
Of course.
is how to create a universe, how to create monsters, how to create magical items, how to create all of this, and also like the rules on like how to run the game. Because
Hmm.
the thing a lot of people forget about D&D, especially like new DMs, and you're like so excited to get into it. It's a social game.
Yeah.
And the social aspect is in 3 ways. They call them the ways of play, I believe. So you have combat, you have
Hmm.
exploration, and you have role play. Some players, we call them like there's a this is like a fan term for them. Beer and
Mm.
pretzels players, and beer and pretzels players, they don't give a fuck about story. They just wanna roll some dice, chop down
Oh,
some goblets, get some loot, get the fuck out of there. This was fun. The
okay.
role players are
Which
more
sounds like
interested.
a boring way to play, though.
Yeah, yeah. I don't like just like heavy combat all the time. It gets boring for me.
Yeah.
The role players are more into role playing. And that's the thing with the story. Now, you said earlier, like, oh, they're branching storylines.
Yeah.
The DM can either have a story, like, you can buy a story. Like, let me give you an example. I have this adventure here. It's called Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus. This is an entire adventure that you can run. It took me and my group 3, 4 months to complete this, and we played once a week.
Okay.
So we met up and just played until
Cool.
we completed this. And this adventure is pretty cool because it's basically Mad Max in hell. So the characters
Oh,
end up in hell and they get these fucking cars that they run amok in and whatnot. It's
oh, okay.
super fun. It's super fun.
That
But
sounds
yeah,
awesome.
but
Because in my head, when I think D&D, I do think high fantasy, Tolkien.
yeah,
So
and there
I did
are
not realize how expansive it actually is. Because
yeah.
basically there's a timeline, so you can choose how technologically advanced like
Well, the
your
thing,
story is.
well, yes and no, because
Okay.
you can decide whatever the fuck you want at the same time. Like so in
Oh, okay.
D&D, the dungeon master basically creates the world. Like you can buy a book, and most of these adventure books they take place in the realm of Faerun. That's like you've seen me play Baldur's Gate 3
Yep.
on stream.
Yes.
Faerun is like the basic D&D universe, and that's that high fantasy universe.
Hmm.
And all of the like adventures that you buy take place in that universe, more or less. There are a few exceptions, but more or less they take place in that universe, and that's like your standard sword and sorcery universe.
Hmm.
However, the Dungeon Master guy says, if you want, you can do whatever the fuck you want with these rules, basically. So you can create the
Amazing.
universe you want to play in. So that's why my universe is more closest to like industrial age thing, because for me that's like a cool like era and a cool way of interacting with these things.
Yeah. It's more Bloodborne.
It's more Bloodborne, exactly.
Yeah,
You just wanted to sneak Bloodborne in, didn't you?
yeah.
And it works. Like for at least my group, they seem to enjoy their time when we're playing.
Hmm.
And that's the thing, like you can do it however you want. The adventures is just a great way if you don't want to write your own adventure. So when you're like running this adventure, like Baldur's Gate over here, the way it's written as well, it kind of like helps the players on their way. So it's like, oh, you meet
Hmm.
this person, and this person wants to send you there. What do you want to do now? And then the characters have to like interact with these characters to figure out what's going on. But there's like a clear end goal, and it's written in a way that at least like helps your characters go. And
Yeah.
it's
It's more like a video game
it's
story,
almost like,
basically.
yeah, it's kind of like a video game. Now the other type of storytelling is the thing I do in my campaign, where it's way more character focused. Because I've created everything on my own, I can
Yeah.
do whatever the fuck I want. So
Hmm.
I create these characters, this universe, and my players create their characters, and then I actually send them like this Google Docs document, and it's like, fill this out, and it has questions like, what is your character's favorite food? Like
Okay.
stupid questions
Cool.
like that.
Are you going to
Tell
do that
me,
later for me?
sorry,
Are you going to do that later for me
if
and
you
then
want
create
to.
a character? Yeah, that
Yeah,
sounds
we're
fun.
gonna create a character by the end, and we're gonna try and create like a backstory as well, like a short one.
Oh,
Yeah, we're not
awesome.
gonna go super detailed, but
Yeah.
yeah, actually, I think I have. Yeah, we'll get to that actually in a bit. Yeah, for me, new players especially, I would never run something like Baldur's Gate, and I don't. And I think I would run like a one shot. So a campaign
Mm.
is something, yeah, like this Baldur's Gate book, where it takes like months to
Mhm.
finish. And when you finish
Yeah.
it, it's like, oh, cool, and you tell this story together. So I'm gonna spoil the Baldur's Gate Descendants of Avernus campaign now. So if you're listening and thinking, yeah, I'm gonna play this campaign, maybe shut off the. Come back in like 10 minutes. I don't know.
Okay. You can spoil
So,
it for me because even if I eventually
yeah.
happen to play it, I won't remember it. So it's fine.
So the thing is, like, the place where the stories actually begin to become cool, and it's when you get invested in your character and in the characters surrounding you.
Mm.
So when we played that campaign, the whole campaign is based around going to hell. So when you go to hell, the DM, me, I introduce these like devils that have contracts. So you can sign a contract with the devil. So you can essentially sell your soul for power. So the way that the campaign
Okay.
ended was Joe's character was the only one that didn't sell her soul, and by the end she found like this magical sword that turned her to this angel. And then by the end, when they had to fight like the big bad of the campaign, one of the characters, because he sold his soul, he got this thing called a madness flaw. So I told him, hey, your character has gone mad now, and your character will do whatever it takes to save the city that they have to save. So at the final battle, they're fighting the final boss. This guy is like, hey, talks to the bad guy, and he tells her, hey, can you save? If you save the city, I will kill these guys like the other players.
Right.
And then me, I'm playing the bad guy. So I think, would she accept this deal? Yeah, she needs help right
Yeah.
now. She's like, okay,
Right.
here's another contract, and he just signed the contract, and suddenly my players are fighting each other, fighting this bad guy, and this epic, like, I also play music while we're playing, so this epic
Mm.
music is blasting as well, and they were like, hey, this is like watching a fucking movie, because
Yeah.
we don't know and I don't know where it's going either, because it can end with them losing, and that's the end of the campaign.
Yeah.
And that's where like the players get invested. It's when the storylines start to get like make sense.
Hmm.
Yeah, I play in another campaign where I'm a player, and I play this character, and this is my friend's universe. Like, he created this universe, and I play this character who is a dragonborn, which is basically a dragon person, basically, but with
Okay.
no wings and no
I,
tail.
I can, I
Yeah,
can pick. Oh, no
yeah,
tail?
no tail
Oh,
though, no
I
tail.
wanted the tail. I
In
wanted the tail.
canon, there's no tail, but some DMs are like, I don't give a fuck. You want a tail here? You have a tail.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit.
So
And
they have a dragon face, basically, really.
yeah,
Just like a big reptile.
yeah, it's a big reptile, exactly. And
Cool.
and the way I played mine is because like I played him as a young guy, so, and he's the son of a general,
Mm.
and so it become like this running thing where he was, because I'm good like at strategizing at the game, I made it like his character thing. So I would speak as the character. I would go, yeah, maybe we should go inside and defeat these people before it's too late, or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
And that's like again when we start getting invested, because Joe's character is like in that campaign is a chef's kiss. She plays this half orc that is this. She's kind of dumb. She likes horses. That's like her character trait, and she's this big fighter that nobody like dares mess with. But she wants to pretend she's smart is one of the things. So like she can't read, for example. So
Yeah.
So every time we find a book, she like picks it up and pretends like, this makes sense. And she's like, I give the book to Islam's character. It's like, you can't read, can you? So we have like these like funny like inside jokes suddenly with these characters.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
Because
that's
at that
like
point you're part of the world and you're
you're part of
building
the
it with your
world, yeah.
friends.
And that's the cool thing about making your own campaign is how you can integrate the characters into the world. So in my universe, for example, I hope Joe can't hear me because I don't want her. I want to spoil my campaign for her. But
Okay.
like some of the characters like are tied to important people in the universe that they've heard,
Mm.
and they're like essentially tied to what's going on in the world in the story. So they're kind of like they're all main characters in their own right. But the way I'm running my campaign is almost like an open world game. So they
Mm.
all have their own separate missions actually, but and like separate goals that they have to attain. Like one of my players is doing I forgot which samurai movie he was inspired from, but he's essentially playing a samurai that's looking for 7 swords
Cool.
of legend, and he
Right.
made me create the swords of legend, and
Cool.
and without telling Joe, because she can hear, one of the swords is a fucking shotgun sword. Because I was like, why the fuck not? That's awesome. And that's kind of like how I've created that. So
That's
he has
great.
to go through the motions to find the swords. Another
Hmm.
one is like, is this like capitalist who's trying to invest invest in land in like in the poorer country. He comes from the empire, which is like technologically and financially the best off place of the world. So he's playing his
Yeah.
character as this capitalist douchebag who's just like, maybe we can invest in this land and maybe I can make more money for my family. You've heard of my family, the Crawford family. And he keeps like saying shit like that. And again, inside jokes and such. And that's like the roleplay aspect of the game.
Yeah.
But of course, you can't just, and now I'm moving on. You can't just like you can talk your way through it or everything, but that's when you get introduced to your best friend and enemy of the game, the
Hmm.
fucking D20. So,
The
for your
D20.
audio, for your audio listeners out there, I'm holding a 20-sided die right now, so Hugo can
Yeah.
see it. This is like the blue die is my favorite. I think it's the one I use the most. This die. So the 20-sided die is the main mechanic of this whole game. You got a but like I have a bag full of die here. This die
Hmm.
is the most important one though. The whole game is based around this. So remember those characters I mentioned before, like Joe's character is very strong, but she's stupid. She has low intelligence. Like she has very low intelligence, but her strength is very high. She's like physically very powerful. So
I like that. I like
yeah,
that, by the way, that Joe chose to make this kind of character because, like, she seems like the
we
opposite in real life.
we could make an entire episode on Joe's characters because every single time Joe makes a character, I go fucking insane because they're so hilarious. Like
Yeah.
she's way better than me. Like she makes the funniest characters.
Mm.
The 20-sided die works in such a manner. So, for example, Joe's character, as an example, she's very strong. She arrives at the door. The door is locked. She can either pick the lock or break it open. Of course,
Hmm.
because she's strong, she will choose to break it open. So, because she has a high strength, she can plus 5 to her roll. So, when she rolls the d20, I'm going to roll it now. I rolled a 15. So,
Hmm.
15 plus 5 equals 20.
Right.
Now, the the DM has set something called a DC. That's a difficulty check. And the difficulty check basically means that you have to roll over that in order to succeed. So if let's say the difficult,
And
so it's this flimsy door.
okay,
Sorry.
is it usually like? Oh, okay. It depends on the specific situation, so it's not a general number.
Yeah. So for example,
Okay.
this is a flimsy door. The DM in his head has, or her head has said like, okay, it's a 5, and she rolled a
Hmm.
20. Because also because of the difference, like some DMs, like I do, I like to like exaggerate how strong she is because she rolled so high. So like you just
Yeah.
obliterate that door, and then you look inside and you see like what do you do? And she says, okay, I'm gonna try and investigate what's going on here. There's a check called investigation, but investigation is tied to intelligence. I said,
Right.
give me
So he has a
an
minus something on the check.
So she has a
This time.
-1 or 2, I believe, actually, on that check. So if I roll, let's see, I rolled a 10. Okay, that's an 8. And the DC is 15, perhaps to find a certain key. So you're like, oh, you look around, but you don't find anything interesting. So that's kind of how like the die work. But the die also work in conversation sometimes. Because if you
Right.
try to like let's say you meet someone you're trying to persuade to give you a better price.
Right.
I would say as the roll a persuasion roll, and that's the same thing. You roll your plus or minus depending on your stats, and then the outcome will be whatever it is. And that's why I always say the D20 is your best and worst friend. Because when you roll that 20, the highest, the natural 20, it's always so fucking exciting. But when you roll that 1, that fucking 1, it's just like it can make you so mad, especially because like if you made a character that's like super intelligent and you roll a
Right.
1 and you're like yeah, I got distracted. Like the DM sometimes can be a bit of an asshole, say, oh, you don't understand this at all. It's like, come on, dude, you can make a bit more easy, go a bit easier on me. So that's what the D20 is basically. It's
And it
what the
works for. So there. Let me get this. There's a certain amount of different actions that you can perform, I imagine, and they're set from the beginning, right? That
yeah, no.
require. Well, I mean.
Oh yeah. There are a set number of actions that, and it's up to like the DM to say to like interpret if you should do one of these actions. So you have a bunch of skills, which ones before we actually start the episode, I should have sent you like a blank sheet. I will do that in a bit.
Okay.
So you can fill it out. But yeah, basically, when you're playing, you have to make sure that you have all these checks, and DM knows what these checks are. So the DM usually says, "Okay, give me a nature check if you're like out in the nature and you're trying to figure out something about nature. I guess give me a nature check, and then you roll for that." So that's how it works with the skill checks. Now in combat is where the game starts to get a bit more difficult because all of this is
Mm.
actually very simple, but combat is where it starts to get a bit difficult. So some DMs and some players they like to use miniatures, and some do it all theater of the mind. I like to use
Okay.
miniatures just because it gives it that game aspect as well. So
Yeah.
you have that like you have these grids, and I have this mat that I draw on. So I usually draw when we're in combat, and you're holding up the Bloodborne figure. You know what? I have mine here as well, so why not? We can both have the Bloodborne figure.
Awesome.
So when you're playing, let's go theater of the mind actually first. Theater of mind basically means you don't have anything on the table other than the die. So
Hmm.
what happens is like the DM says, okay, you see these 3 thugs in front of you. One of them has red hair, another has a big scar, and the last one he has like this big bushy beard. So you kind of know, okay, there's the scar guy, the beard guy, and the redhead dude. Those are the
Mhm.
3 enemies that are there. And then you just say, okay, I go, if you're playing a fighter, which is like one of the most simpler classes, like, okay, I go over, hit him with my short sword. And then the DM explains. When you're playing on a grid, however, you
Mm.
can start to account for distance as well, which you kind of have to do when you're playing Theater of the Mind, just easier when you have a grid. So there's distance, so you can move, and you have actions and bonus actions. So depending on if it says this is a bonus action, you can do a bonus action. If it's not, it's probably an action. So set fighter. Let's use Joe's character as an example again because she's playing a fighter. So Joe's character has a sword, right?
Yeah.
And she says, okay, I'm gonna go attack the guy with the bushy beard. The DM says you have to roll for an attack. That's the D20 again. So the
Yeah.
D20 is again to do everything in the game is basically the D20. So she rolls it, and she says, oh, that's an 18 plus her modifier, so that's 23. So she goes over and 23, and the bandit that she's fighting has an AC, which stands for armor class. So she has to
Mm.
hit above that AC. So the AC is 12. She was 23, so she's got to hit. Great.
Mhm.
She hit. That's when she
But
gets to.
how does health and damage work?
That was the next point.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
you have
See,
a set amount. Yeah.
I'm
You're
following.
following. You're following. You have a set amount of hit points. So
Mhm.
it's your healing points, basically. Yeah, it's your healing points, and when it gets to 0, you're unconscious. You're not dead. You're unconscious.
Like
If you,
Pokemon.
yeah, Pokemon. If your health goes to the minus of your max health, you're dead. Dead.
You're dead. Okay.
If you're unconscious, you have to do death saving throws. We'll talk about that in a minute. So she goes over to hit. She hits. She rolls the die specific to what she did and what sword she's using, what weapon. So that's when the rest of the die come into play. So if a fighter uses a great, no, not great, there's a certain weapon that has, like, for example, 1d10 damage, it says.
Mm.
So 1d10 means 1d10. So this is a d10, this is a 10-sided die. She rolls
Yep.
it. That's a 6 plus whatever, plus her strength, because she's a strength user. So if her strength is 5, that's 11 damage. She goes over, stabs him, 11 damage. That's kind of how damage works. So it depending on the die, and it says on your sheet what you have to use there. Now, if we like circle back to dying, so Joe's character is down now. Yeah, we've been using, sorry Joe, we've been using your character as an example.
I'm sorry, Joe. You're dead.
Oh, we'll talk about that after the podcast. So, her character's down. She has to roll these death saving throws. That's when you roll a d20, and if it's higher than, if it's 11 or higher, she gets a save, and if it's 10 or lower, she gets a fail. If you get 3 fails, you die.
You die. Okay.
And the character is dead.
Okay, so
So
that
if
person
you-
is out of the game.
Out of the game, or like out of the game, if the characters can somehow resurrect you, you can come back. I've had a character die in the game, like my character from before I talked about, the dragon one. He actually died during a fight once, and they had to bring me over to a cleric. They had to pay absurd amount of gold, and because you have to use a diamond, and it's a whole thing to resurrect people. And they resurrected my character, so they brought him back to life. But death is a big deal in D&D because if a character dies, they die, and and as I said, there are 2 ways of dying: either the whole minus thing or the free death saves. If you get free saves, like saves and not fails, you awake. No, you're not awake.
Right.
You're alive. You're stabilized, but you're not dead. Like you're just unconscious until someone wakes you up and heals you and all that.
Yeah.
So that's basically how combat works. You roll the die, see if you hit. If you hit, you do the thing. Of course, spellcasters and all that, they got way more, but they got a description of what the spells do. I would never if you're a new D&D player and you want to play a spellcaster, the Warlock is the perfect spellcaster newbie character because they have like one spell they spam over and over again. So it's easy to get into if you're new to D&D to play as a Warlock. Because if you're playing, say, a wizard, the wizard's probably the most difficult character to play as, but it's also like one of the most fun because you have like you have so many spells that you can use.
So you can do a bunch of different things.
You can do a bunch of different things, and that's the thing also with D&D, that the escalation of your characters. So there's 20 levels that your character can be, like from level 1 to 20. 20 is max level. Level 1, you basically just started your adventure. Like you're basically a peasant who threw away his shit. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go on an adventure. You're Frodo at the start of like Lord of the Rings. You can't do jack shit. That's who you are at level 1. You're super weak.
Yeah.
You're super weak, and your class is super simple. You barely have like the thing that makes your class your class. And level 20, you're basically a demigod.
Right.
And that's kind of how they look at it. So, at level 1 to 4, you're basically doing missions for like small villages.
So this is quite similar to like how an MMO would work.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. Because
In terms of leveling.
Yeah, and every single RPG is basically D&D when you think about it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So what is it like? Level 5? No, 5 to 10. You're like helping cities, like bigger cities and countries, and level. And from there, it's like continents, and then it's countries, and then it's continents, and then by the end, you're basically saving the multiverse by the end. So that's kind of like the escalation usually in D&D, and how it works from there. Leveling wise. So some players, like some DMs, prefer, like some groups actually prefer to have like a balanced team. Oh, you need your healer and you need your tanks and you need. It doesn't matter. Yeah, you can do
Mm.
whatever you want because the DM can always. That's the cool thing about D&D. The DM can always make
Adjust.
sure, adjust, and make sure that the game is fun for everyone. So that's why I always like whenever I play D&D, I always want a session zero where before we play, we actually talk about what do we want from the game. Like what do I want?
Hmm.
What do I expect from you? What do you expect from me? Just to get everything clear. Because sometimes I think people are so excited to play D&D, they kind of forget to have that conversation because you almost like you have to enter a social contract. At the same time, you also have to talk about things like are things off limit. I know, for example, in my games, any mentions of like sexual assault is a no go. I don't want that in my games. I don't want you to make a character who's like, oh, I got sexually assaulted and that's why I am like I am. I'm brooding like that. Like, don't do that, man.
Okay. Yeah. This is
It's
not
bad. This
Zack
is
Snyder's
not.
Justice League.
This is not just Batman isn't gonna say fuck here. No, you're allowed to say fuck, but like even like I'm sure some tables are like we don't want you swearing at our table or
Hmm. Yeah.
so yeah. For me, like that's important to make sure that you have that social
Having some
contract,
some ground rules.
some ground rules for how we're gonna play and what's it gonna be like and all that. Just to make it fun again, you know.
Yeah.
So I've been talking your ear off, but before we continue, I just want to talk about the newest book that I just bought. It's called Candlekeep Mysteries. It takes place
Hmm.
in this university,
Candlekeep.
Candlekeep Mysteries.
Candlekeep
Yeah.
mysteries. Okay.
And Candlekeep is basically this university in Faerun, which is like, again, the main D&D universe. But they say in the start, like, you can put this university, whatever, you can put it in your universe and just change the name and it's yours.
Yeah.
And like it says so in the beginning of the book, even like you can use it however you want.
I really like how free of
Yeah.
doing whatever you want you are. Like you can
Yeah.
take elements from different universes and different things that you like and just build your own.
And they say it like in every single book, actually. Like
Mm.
take it and use it in your own universe, put it in ours, whatever. You can use elements, you can like I know some people buy the adventure books and don't even run the adventure, but just like take inspirations from there and make it their own. Or maybe like,
Right.
hey, I just want the new monsters that are in the book.
Mhm.
But yeah, this book is pretty cool because it's basically an anthology series where it's a bunch of like it's a bunch of smaller adventures. So you have adventures for level 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 16. So if you ever want to play, and I feel like we should make
Yeah.
a character for this, I'm
Yeah.
sure Joe would love to join us as well. And maybe if you can find like 1 or 2 more people, we could actually do the first what's it called? The first adventure here. And this adventure
Mhm.
would take us like a few hours and we're done. It's like a one shot and it's over.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool because this whole thing is made like you're at this university basically. You find a book and this book leads you on to a weird adventure. And it's written by different writers and such. I've read a few of these adventures and it's so good. And by the way, for the audio listeners, I'm holding the limited edition version of the book. So this is the limited edition with the cool like gold thingy on it. It's so cool.
Got to get that clout, you know?
Gotta get that cloud. Yeah, I actually started like buying the limited edition versions of the books because they're the same price, and they're just like out of print quickly. So you might as well just get them. Okay,
Oh yeah. If you're
here you go.
pre-ordering or stuff like
Here you go. We're gonna make a character for you.
that. Okay. How does
In
that
order,
work?
yeah. In order to make it simple, though, we're
Mhm.
gonna be using the basic rule sets. So we're not gonna be using the what's it called, the player's handbook here. So
Okay.
you're not going to be able to play as every single character or every single race or every single like class, but it should give you like a taste of what's to come.
Yeah. I think
And
that makes sense.
yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
that would
You
take that sounds like it would
yeah.
take hours.
So before we actually started the podcast, you told me, "Can you play as a robot in D&D?" And I laughed and said, "Yeah, you
Yeah.
can actually." Because like the D&D books, like they come in expansion packs. Like the newest like expansion book is called Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and this one
Hmm.
includes a new race which is called the Warforge, which is basically a giant robot dude. And he's like powered by magic or something. I'm not sure, but yeah, you can play as them. And they got new like subclasses and such. So each class has a subclass. So if you're a rogue, you can be a thief or an assassin. So in this book, they introduce like new subclasses, like this They introduce basically a Jedi in this one, the Psionic Warrior, which is basically
Hell yes.
yeah, which is basically a
It's like
warrior that can control shit with his mind. like when you read it, you're like, it's like let me find it and just see if I can read an excerpt from it, because you're gonna be like, yeah, this is a Jedi. And it's
hell
like
yeah.
when I saw the first, I was like, oh, this is funny. Let's see the Psi Warrior, page 42. Page 42. Are you enjoying yourself, Hugo, with this episode? I know this is a crazy episode than usual, but
Oh, this is pretty cool. This is pretty cool.
this is pretty
I'm
cool.
actually looking forward to
You
doing the character
actually
thing.
okay. Where is it? The Psi Warrior.
Also, it kind of feels like, if I can comment on all the stuff that we
Comment.
talked about,
Yeah.
it feels like it's the kind of thing that seems more complicated than it actually is. And
Yeah.
like once you've actually played for a while, it kind of comes by itself. You don't have to like
Yeah.
know
I've-
everything by heart or whatever it is.
I once had I was visit to my friends who live in Copenhagen and had to like stay there for a weekend. Like it was just before COVID. I just managed to squeeze that little
D&D
fun
session.
time D&D session. So I went and they've never played before. I think one of them watched a weird YouTube video and it was just more confused. And by the end of it, they were into it, man. Like they were role playing, they were playing like they understood how to like play the characters with the die rolls and all that, and it was so much fun. Like, and one of them especially is not the type of person who would play something like this, and he was like, I would gladly play more. This was fun, and for him, it's especially like playing his character because he made a dwarf prince who had a tough time growing a beard, so.
So it was insecure.
So he's very like insecure about himself and he wanted to prove himself. And that's how he played it. Like he just wanted peace. So every time he met people was like, hey, we don't need to fight. And then he would roll for persuasion to like make sure like to like persuade people not to fight him. And they would be like, yeah, no, we gotta fight. He's like, oh dang. Yeah, the Psi Warrior. Yeah, it says here like awaken to psionic power within. A Psi Warrior is a fighter who augments their physical might with Psi-infused weapon strikes, telekinetic lashes, and barriers of mental force. This is a Jedi. This is a fucking Jedi. Yeah,
That's
so this is
amazing.
like from this expansion pack. Hello, it's Islam and Hugo from the future. So we
Yeah.
got way too excited and we ended up recording way too much. So you can stop here and say, "Wow, that was a great podcast. I learned a lot about D&D." Or if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty, Hugo and I create a character together. What kind of character? You can watch episode 2.5 to find out. If you're not interested and feel like, "Wow, that seems like a lot, Islam. I don't want to go through all of that." Well, thanks for watching up to this point at least. You can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and what did you call it? Pocket what? Pocket Cast?
Pocket Casts.
Pocket Casts.
Pocket Casts.
Pocket
It's one of the big apps that people use on Android.
Oh,
it's also Google Podcasts, by the way.
Oh, and
So, yeah.
Google Podcasts as well. If you want to see us as well, you can find us on YouTube on my channel, IDBuy. We don't have a URL yet. We'll get one. Inshallah, one day. We'll get one. You can follow us there to see the video version. And if you want to see the live recording, usually right now we'll be going live on Fridays, but we'll see if that changes. At 9 p.m. Central European time. Around there.
Yeah,
okay, thanks for sticking around. And if you want to continue, go right ahead. Bye.
Bye.